So I've got all my pieces cut. I've now prepared them by going around the edges with my overlocker of every single piece. The reason why I like doing this at this stage now is because it's really difficult to manoeuvre after the seams are all sewn together. You've got your pockets and your zip in the way and everything. So I've overlocked all the way around my pocket pieces and just the side panels of the skirt. So just down the side seams of each panel. I haven't done the waistband or the hem. Don't worry if you haven't got an overlocker, you can use a zigzag stitch, but also you can use your pinking shears. So if you have these pinking shears, which we discussed earlier, you literally just the very edge, don't go cutting off a centimetre or whatever you want to do, just literally cut the very edge of it. It will stop your fabric from fraying once you've sewn your seams together. I haven't done the waistband because all these seams are going to be hidden, but I do need to reinforce the waistband with my interfacing. So we're going to iron that on now. I'll just show you quickly how to do that. So when you're putting on the interfacing, you have to make sure you've got the right sides together. So we're going to put this obviously on the wrong side of the fabric. I've got my right side facing down towards the board, and then on the interfacing you can kind of feel the bobbly side, which is the glue side, that wants to go down onto the wrong side of the waistband. Make sure your edges are they're not overlapping because you don't want to iron it to your board, and then you want to use some kind of pressing cloth over the top, because if you do have this the wrong way round it'll stick to your iron, and also you don't want to scorch your fabric. And we're used to ironing like this. What you need to do is hold it down for about 10 seconds because you want the glue to melt onto the fabric. So you're going to do this all the way along. Okay. That's it. I can feel already that that's really nice and strong. I haven't got any little ruckers and puckers in there, so that's fine. Now the next thing we want to do is take two of your smaller side panels, and we're going to reinforce where the zip is going to go. So you need to place those just next to each other. That will do. And then we've got our two strips that we cut out for the zip, and they're going to go all the way from the top right along that seam there. So I've reinforced both of the zip openings here. So I'm going to put those to one side because I don't want them to get them confused with the next bit. We're going to now put the pockets together. Very exciting. So these are the two side seams that I've chosen. It doesn't really matter as long as they're not what you've just reinforced the zip on. And you want your pocket pieces, you want the right side of the fabric upwards facing you, and you are going to put your pocket pieces down, right side down, so you've always got the right side together. So we're going to now line these up. You want about 1.5 inches from the top. That's going to be the top of your pocket piece, which this one's perfect. And you want to make sure that these seams are perfectly lined up together, just like that. So this one's going to match up. Just make sure it's symmetrical. And then you want to pin, stop them moving around, and put a pin in the top, and a pin in the bottom, one in the middle for good measure, and do exactly the same. Just make sure it hasn't slipped at all. You want them exactly the same on each side. And if you notice, my pin heads are on the outside, they're not on the inside. So a couple of little things about your sewing machine. I've threaded my machine with the right colour thread for my fabric. I've also threaded an extra bobbin. It's not fully threaded because I was doing another project last night, But I've got some spare there because the last thing you want to do halfway through finishing off your garment is, if you run out of thread, you're going to have to take all the thread out to rethread your bobbin. So always have another bobbin threaded, that's always handy. So you're only just going to use your straight stitch on here. We're going to use about 2.5mm, so set your stitch size between 2 and 3. And what I'm going to do is right along this seam here, just where the pocket is pinned to the side of the skirt. I'm not going to do the full seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch here. I'm just going to do just under 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to place my pieces underneath here. This is the presser foot, and this side of the presser foot here, I want to match up with my fabric. And this is just going to do, this is not quite 5/8 of an inch. This is going to be just under 1/2 inch in. So I'm going to move that forward just a tad because I'm going to start off with a couple of back stitches. Whoop. That's it. I'm going to take this pin out and then a nice straight line. You don't have to rush this, nice and slowly. You want it nice and neat. Take the pin out as you go. Get to the end here, just back stitch a little bit. Now when you're finished, before you take your fabric out, always bring the needle up to its highest point, and the way you'll know this is this little silver thread catcher thing is going to be completely out of your machine. So make sure that's up first, lift up your presser foot, bring it out, and either break the thread here or cut it off, and go to your top thread and just give that a trim. It's always a good handy tip is to trim your threads. Oops, should keep a little pair of snippers here. Trim your threads as you go, because what you don't want to do is when you've got your finished garment have to go over the entire thing to make sure that there's no threads. So I've just stitched that pocket seam together. Time for the next one. I'm going to go down from the top of the skirt again, so this time my pocket piece will be underneath, but I'll still be able to see where they are joining together. Just make sure your underneath fabric is nice and flat, so you're not going to get any puckers. And then back stitch a little bit again, and then a nice straight line, keeping those seams together, Carly. That's it. Where the pocket ends and back stitch a little bit. Okay, end on a high and trim your threads. So we're back at the ironing board now. You're going to have to get to grips with the fact that you're going to spend as much time at the ironing board as you are at the sewing machine. Nobody likes ironing, but what we're going to do is just press these pockets out now. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is just press over what I've just sewn, just to kind of blend the stitches a little bit. They do tend to get a bit puckered. And then you want to open it up so it's nice and straight. You can kind of finger press it as you go. I'm going to lay my muslin on top. This is just a square of muslin that I cut off. It was an old offcut of something. It just stops it scalding the fabric. So I've pressed that out nice and neatly. And do the same with the other one. So right sides together again. We're going to put the two pieces together that we've stitched and make sure that the seam of the skirt is nice and flat outwards. I'm going to pin first of all this top seam together, and then I'm going to match up the bottom seam. Just make sure it's really nice and flat. Just give it a little tug. Don't pull too hard because you've now cut this skirt on the bias, which means there's a little tiny bit of stretching. You literally just want to match up your corner pieces. And then you want to go around and match up the pocket pieces and just pin them together. That's it. And once you've done that, ooh, managed to pin that to my board. You want to pin your skirt seams all the way down from the top. Make sure they add up. Oh, there's a little bit of movement there. That's all right, we can trim that off at the bottom. So that's now all pinned together, and we're just going to stitch around there. So we're back at the machine, and this time we're going to be 5/8 of an inch in. So on your sewing machine, you should have some little markers. I know which one of mine is 5/8 of an inch, but you can see as we go down here, you're not going to match up to this seam that you just did. So I'm going to start a little bit forward again, with a back stitch, and then you're going to come down past this row of stitches that's holding the pocket together. And you can mark this with a pin if you want to on both the things, so that I'm just eyeballing it. I'm going to get to there and I'm going to do a little back stitch. Make sure your needle's down. I'm going to just back stitch a tad more. Put your needle down, lift your presser foot up and pivot the fabric round. So now we're just going to sew around the edge of the pocket. Again, nice and slowly, there's no rush here. Whoop. Come in a little bit more. Just keep making sure that your fabric's nice and flat. Now I'm going to move this pin head because it is in the way. I'm just going to keep those seams together though. And when we get to here, make sure that both your skirt seams are still facing outwards. That's good. You're going to go past up to this where it matches here on the fabric, just a little way in, and then pivot to the side. So this is the side of the skirt is going to be horizontal to you now. You're just going to go in a few stitches over what you just did before. Pivot up. And you can see that we're back on the 5/8 of an inch here. I'm going to do a few back stitches, making sure I'm nice and level. And then beautiful thing. We're going to stitch all the way down the side of the seam. End on a high and snip that. And we're just going to snip your top stitch again. And then back to the ironing board. Okay, so now I'm going to press the top seam out and then all the way down the side seam of the skirt, I'm just going to press it out. So I've done the side seam. Now I'm just going to press the pocket opening. And there you go, you've got a beautiful pocket. So I've now sewn both of my side pieces together with the pockets. We're now going to put the zip in. Now we're going to do a lap zip, which means that one side of the rear of the skirt is going to be overlapping the actual zip itself. It's quite nice. And the underlap is going to be on the right hand side as you're looking at it, and the overlap's going to be on the left. So what we're going to do, so as you're placing it down like that and you've got the reinforcement underneath, we're going to turn the right side in 1/2 inch and press that. And then we're going to turn the left side in 5/8 inch and we're going to press that. And I'll show you why in just a second. I've now put my two side pieces together, right sides together, and I put the zip where it would go, and just below where the edge of the zip is, the bottom, you've got this little stopper here, I put a mark in, that's just below that stopper there. I put a little mark and pin there, and then I've sewn my 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way down to the bottom, and I've pressed that seam out now. So we're ready now to press for the zip. Now, if you hold your skirt open like this and undo your zip like this, so this right side here is going to be the underlap of the zip. So we just literally want to press now on the right side 1/2 inch. You don't want to do the full seam allowance on the right side, and then you want to do the full seam allowance on the left, because this is going to be overlapping, so you're not going to be seeing the zip at all. So on this right hand side now, I'll just turn it over, let's move that out of the way. And because this strip here was 1 inch, you're going to know that if you put these together, that's going to create 1/2 inch. You can measure all this out yourself and mark it out. Just for this quickness, I'm just going to show you. And I'm going to, and just down to the bottom there, there's going to be sort of a little overlap. That's fine. And on the other side, we're going to do the full 5/8 inch. I've already kind of pressed this, but I just want to double check that this is the correct seam allowance. That's fine there. And going all the way down to the bottom is 5/8 inch. Okay. Now turning this the right way up again, we're going to start here on the right hand side. I think I'm going to close my zip for this one. I'm going to put my, now at the top of your zip you're going to get these little, sometimes they're metal, sometimes they're plastic. They're going to be about the 5/8 inch. So you just want to make sure that that's in the right place there. And I'm going to pop a little pin in with my pin head aiming downwards. Now I am going to now go right up to the edge of the zip with all my pins and make sure that's nice and straight. All the way down to the bottom. Okay, and then I'm just going to stitch that on. Okay, I've put my two right sides together with my reinforcing here. I have measured from the top of the skirt band down to where the this is upside down. Down to where this little stopper here, sometimes that's metal, you might not be able to see this, this is a plastic one, but just in line with that, just underneath the bottom of it, I've put a little mark. I popped a pin in there, and then I did a 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way down to the bottom of the skirt, and I've pressed it open. Now when we open it up here, we'll open it up to a little V. The right side of the skirt is going to be the underlap. So we're going to be stitching this side of the skirt up to the zipper teeth, and the other ones will be going over the top. So when the fabric's together, you won't see the zip at all. So on the right side, you want to fold in 1/2 inch. You don't want to do the full seam allowance. So because we've already cut this to 1 inch wide, it's exactly half in the way, and I've pressed that close like this. Now on the left hand side, you want to do the full 5/8 inch. So from the edge of the fabric up to the fold is 5/8 inch all the way along, and this will be going down to where you've stitched. Now we want to now pin in the zip to the right hand side. Remember, this is the 1/2 inch allowance. So we're going to put the top of the zip with the top of the waistband, and I'm just going to pin that in place there. And I'm going to pin down so that my fabric is touching the very edge of the zipper teeth. Do this on a flat surface, it's easier. Okay, that's perfect. Your machine will have come with a zipper foot. This is something so that you can get the needle right close to the teeth and make it nice and neat. So you want to release your normal foot from there. Have a look at your instruction manual if you need to. And we're going to fit it. This, you can get them that adjust the needle either side, but this one here, you can put the claw on either side of the bar. So we're going to put it on the left-hand side. That's it. That should have picked up. That's lovely. So I'm going to put this underneath. What I'm going to do is just undo the zip so it's easier for me to sew. And I'm going to pop my presser foot down here. Take this needle out now because it's in the way, this pin. Pop my needle in. I'm going to do a little back stitch just to hold it in place, and then very neatly and carefully take the pins out as we go. Now I'm going to put my needle in, lift up my foot, excuse me, and close my zip, just so that it's difficult to go past the head of the zip there. And I'm just going to go past this little opening here and do a little back stitch. Okay. Okay, you can see how lovely and neat and straight that is. Now we're going to move on to the other side. So bring this towards you. And what we're going to do, this piece of fabric is going to go over the top of the zip. And we're obviously not going to stitch that over. We're going to stitch next to the zip here. So just lining it up and making sure there's no creases from the bottom. What I'm going to do is just feel my way, make sure I'm not pinning through the zipper teeth. And making sure that's a nice neat edge. Okay, all the way to the top there. Now that should stay in. And marry up. So we're going to release the zipper foot and just move it over to this side now. That's now caught nicely. And again, we're going to work from the top down. I'm going to open the zip again. And I'm going to first off pop the needle in and just take a look underneath. It needs to go over a little bit more. Your zipper foot won't let you go over your line of teeth here. So I'm going to take that out. Little back stitch again. Take it nice and gently. Bit of thread's got caught there. You can take that out afterwards. And again, with the needle down fully, I'm just going to lift the foot up and close the zip. And where we've come down to here, this is now the closing, so we want to ensure that the needle's in. I'm just going to back stitch across. So you've now got two really lovely lines of straight stitching, and hopefully, yes, the zipper opens perfectly, and you can see on there how neat and tidy that one is. So I've got my back piece here, I've got my two side pocket pieces. We're going to now sew all the seams together. I'm just going to lay down right sides together, my two side pieces, and then connect my front piece to my two side pieces as well. So all the seams are going to be pinned and sewn with our seam allowance. So I've sewn all my panels together. I've trimmed all my upper threads, apart from that one. And what I'm going to do now is show you how to gather the waistband. We're going to move the stitch to the biggest stitch you've got. It's number 4 on my machine. I'm going to make sure I've got enough thread behind me and just before the zip. And we're going to, again, line the edge of the fabric with the edge of your zipper foot. So this is 1/2 inch in. I'm going to pop my needle down. Don't back stitch on this one. And very slowly follow the edge of the fabric around all the way to the other side. Now when you come to a seam like this, you want to make sure the seams are pressed open. Get to the end, lift the needle up, don't backstitch, and leave a nice long piece of thread. And then we're going to go back where we started. Now this time you want to place your needle exactly in the middle between the line you've just stitched and the edge of the fabric. So this is going to be even more tricky, so you want to go even slower. You don't want to cross over this stitch because then your gather won't work. So just very carefully, very gently sewing all the way around. So we've now created 2 large stitches next to each other along the top line. You want to locate the bobbin stitch. So obviously you were sewing with the right side of the fabric down. The bobbin stitch is going to be underneath, which is on the right side. So you locate those 2 threads there. Just gently wind them around your finger, and you want to just gently pull the fabric away from the thread, and this is where you need very strong thread, because the last thing you want to do now is to have this thread break on you. So just be gentle and take your time with this. Incidentally, apparently I was doing this in my sleep the other night. My husband woke up to find me gathering the duvet cover, and then I shouted at him for laying on the dress that I was making. I don't know. I don't know if I'm sleep sewing now. We're going to add the waistband now. I've got it on my ironing board. I'm going to fold it in half so it's exactly the right width for us, and just press down this crease here. And then I'm going to turn over one edge half an inch. So this is going to be not a full seam allowance, this is just half an inch. This is going to be the front edge. You can measure this out properly. I'm just showing you for the tutorial. Look like it's in the middle. Yep. I'm happy with that one. I'll just turn that over a little bit more. Make that nice and crisp. That's better. Okay. We need to measure now and mark just where we're going to sew towards. So if you remember, this was a 28 inch. So we're going to add our seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch to here. And I'm going to mark that. And then 28 is to here. Okay. And then you want to find your middle section between the two. So this is 28 inches, so on 14 inches I'm going to make a mark here. Remember, this is a disappearing ink pen, so this won't show through. I've transferred my little marks here, so we've got the centre point on the rough edge that we haven't pressed over. That's at the top facing away from me. My waistband is on the right side up, so this is the fabric side that's going to be showing. My 5/8 of an inch seam allowance is on my left, and my inch overlap, or inch and a half overlap, is on my right. That's very important. Now your gathered skirt, I've marked with a pin the centre point of the very, very front of the big panel of the skirt. Now this, again, I'm going to be placing the wrong side of the fabric down onto the right side of the skirt. So we're going from the back. So the right side's facing me, the right side's on the waistband, and I'm going to put my centre point. The edges are together here, the rough edges are together here, and I've just put it over both, under the pin goes under both of the little lines that I've stitched, the gathered lines I've stitched. Now this edge is going to go right up to my seam allowance here. Now I'm going to have to, between these two pins here, make sure my gathers of my skirt are pretty well evenly distributed, because you don't want a great big clump. So this, again, you want to take your time over this. Just make sure that you're happy. You haven't got a great big gather somewhere together. You want your pockets directly at your side. So you might want to do some extra measuring there yourself, just to make sure you've got it all marked out. I think that looks pretty good to me. I've now attached the entire gathered skirt, and I've made sure my gathers are equally distributed in between my markings on my waistband. And I've made sure now that my stitch size is 2.5 again, between the 2 and the 3. So we're going to lower the presser foot down. I'll take this needle out and put my needle in, and it's literally going to be a tiny bit in from my bottom gathered stitch. Just make sure they're all nice and folded downwards. So I don't want to stitch over this line. I want it to be just to the left of this line. I'm going to do a couple of back stitches and then off we go. Now all the way along, just make sure that your waistband is nice and flat and your pleats, just pull them out and make sure they're nice and neat. Again, take your time over this. I've sewn all the way around to the left side of my lower pleated line. So as you can see now, this is my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance that's gone all the way around. I'm just going to trim those great big threads off. You really don't want these getting in the way now. Okay, get rid of those. And the other side. Okay, we're going to fold this over now and I'll show you how to pin. We're on the last lap. I've turned the skirt the right way round now, and you can see the waistband is still quite deep. So where you've pressed it in half earlier, let me get rid of this thread here. We've pressed it in half easier. This is going to make the folding over and the pinning of the waistband much easier. So I'll show you that now. I always like to start from the center point anyway, so we're folding that back over the center point, and you want to make sure that you can press this if it's any easier, but the gathers will be sticking up like this. You want to pull the top down, and you're just going to pin that with the pin head facing down. So when we stitch a nice neat edge stitch along the bottom here, oh, I've pinned it to the zip. If I turn it the other way around, you'll see a nice neat pin stitch there. This will be covered on the inside, so you won't see any of that frill. So we're going to pin that right the way along to the edge. When you get to the edge here, which is your overlap side, you're going to fold this in your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can trim the corners if you want to. We're going to pin all the way around this side, and again folding in your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance this side and pinning it all the way around. I just want to make sure that that edge is a really nice crisp edge. Okay, this is really the part where you really want to take your time, because these are the stitches that are going to be on show. You can get an edge stitching foot. I like flying by the seat of my pants and eyeballing the whole thing. So I have done the bottom edge along the side, and I just turned in and went along the top just to the overlap, and I've stopped there. I did a little back stitch. I've gone back to my very first stitch, and now I'm going to go up along the side. This is just easy because the majority of the fabric is on the right hand side of me now. I'm going to go along this side and then along the top to meet with the other side. Okay, so you can see now with the zip done up, this all fits really nicely and neatly along there. If you find that you've stitched it and you've got a bit of a mismatch, I just If you find you've stitched it and with the zip up it's doing something like this, all you need to do is just undo your edge stitches on one of the sides and just bring it down closer to. But if you've done your measurements correctly, this should all match up. And then we're just going to hand stitch on our hook and bar. And I would just show you that the bar goes underneath on your underlap side and the hook would go on your overlap side. So when it goes over, and you can just, if you sew the hook on first, so it's well hidden like this, when you turn it over, you can place your bar inside, see where it wants to go, and then just hand stitch it to there. Wow. My skirt's finished and I'm so chuffed to pieces. I've hand sewn my hook and bar at the back. I've hemmed it. It needs another final press, I think. My hem is just a very, very fine, because it's on a circle curve, it's really difficult to hem these things. So I just turned it over twice with my iron, and then I did a really nice little neat running stitch along the bottom. And now all I'm going to do is make some hanging loops for the side so it can go in my wardrobe. If you love this fabric, we've got this and lots more on our website, www.chocodolly.co.uk. And I'd love to see your efforts. If you can upload a few of your pictures to our Facebook page or Instagram or even our website, you can always contact us there if you need any more information on these. And I will hopefully see you for another video soon. Happy sewing in the meantime.